Everywhere Donald Trump looks right now, he is losing, and not just in court, with his supporters as well, MAGA voters, MAGA Republicans, and his MAGA mouthpieces in the media. And the biggest domino to fall yet just did, not only after Donald Trump's response to the Israeli strike on Iran, but the lie he got caught in, which has triggered Tucker Carlson, of all people, to come out against Donald Trump in a shocking takedown that has the White House panicking. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting the work that we do on this show. Now, before, of course, we can get into Tucker's takedown of Trump, I want to start with an update on what just happened between Israel and Iran, with an update from Tommy Vitor of Pod Save the World.
The Guardian says that Israel has bombed about 100 targets in Iran, including about a dozen Iranian nuclear sites, including Natanz, which is Iran's primary nuclear site that has an estimated 14,000 centrifuges that they use to enrich uranium. Importantly, Israel has not yet targeted a site called Fordo. We'll get into why that matters later. But additionally, the Israelis assassinated the chief of staff of Iran's armed forces, the deputy chief of the Iranian army, the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, a number of Iranian scientists and military leaders who oversaw Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, and even a politician who was overseeing the nuclear talks with the United States that have been ongoing. The Israelis are briefing the press that this operation could last up to 14 days, so this is far from over. In response so far, the Iranians have been pretty muted. I think they launched about 100 drones at Israel. It seems like all of those were intercepted, but we should assume that's not the end of whatever Iran might do. The timing of this Israeli strike came as a surprise to a lot of people, myself included, because the United States and Iran have their 6th round of nuclear talks scheduled for Sunday. Ben, I would like to point out that if Netanyahu did this to Obama or to Biden or to Bill Clinton or any Democrat, the entire press corps would be talking about it as a humiliation that shows weakness. But, Trump's sycophants are trying to play it as some sort of masterful act of deception. We'll get into that too. I personally find the suggestion that Iran wasn't on high alert, given that the United States had ordered back all of its personnel from Iraq and a bunch of bases in the region, ridiculous. They weren't saving power by flipping off the radars until Monday, but whatever. It's hard to figure out right now what role the U.S. played. Trump seems to be trying to have it both ways. He wants distance from the strike and to posture himself as having been for diplomacy. But as the day goes on, he seems to be doing all these interviews and trying to take more and more credit. So again, I guess time will tell. Trump is going to talk to Netanyahu sometime today. Now we get to watch what happens next. Yesterday, Axios reported that Trump's golf buddy turned top diplomat Steve Witkoff told Republicans in the Senate that Iran could, quote, unleash a mass casualty response if Israel bombs their nuclear facilities. So it seems like that warning was unheeded.
So I wanted to start with that context and an update from the latest news that we have, delivered so perfectly by Tommy, who is always on top of this. But also, I think it's important to keep in mind the context of how the White House is trying to respond, shaping their narrative, which they constantly get tripped up in. So let's take a look at that before we get into Tucker. Trump scrambles to claim credit for Israel's Iran attack he publicly opposed. Donald Trump is walking a tightrope as he claims that he was fully aware of Israel's plans to launch massive airstrikes against Iran, while continuing to distance the U.S. from those strikes and deny Washington took any active role in the preparations. The White House's messaging has shifted quickly from Marco Rubio's arm's-length description of the Israeli attacks as a unilateral action to Trump claiming Friday that he was fully in the loop on the operation and that it came at the end of a 60-day ultimatum he had given Iran to make a deal on its nuclear program. The discordant U.S. response to the strikes, including Rubio's Thursday evening statement, a hasty evacuation of some U.S. personnel from the region, and ambiguity over whether the U.S. provided intelligence or would actively take part in Israel's defense from a likely counterattack, has raised questions over whether Israel may have moved ahead of the Trump administration as a way to present Washington with a fait accompli. If one thing is clear right now, it's that Donald Trump isn't in the loop. Now, whether that's because Fox hasn't started presenting his security briefings as cartoons or because he just doesn't care to be, Donald Trump doesn't know anything, and he's only focused on the narrative. But the narrative is being taken over by conservative media and Tucker Carlson, who had this to say about Trump. Tucker Carlson calls Trump complicit after Israel's attack on Iran. Supporting Israel's assault on Iran has caused the president to lose some of his longest-term acolytes. One such loss apparently includes Tucker Carlson. who issued a newsletter to his audience Friday, grimly titled, "This could be the final newsletter before all-out war." In it, the ex-Fox News anchor accused Donald Trump of being complicit in the act of war and chastised executive decisions that he said had effectively launched U.S. soldiers into another war in the Middle East. Earlier this week, unnamed Washington sources expressed concern over Israel's ability to fend off Iran's retaliation, which would inevitably lead to Benjamin Netanyahu ordering the American military to step in and fight on the country's behalf. Carlson wrote, on Thursday, Iran's president threatened to destroy any country that eliminates his government's nuclear facilities. Now the world will learn what that looks like. Carlson also rejected Secretary of State Marco Rubio's insistence that the White House had not been involved in the bubbling tensions that preceded the attack and that the administration was putting the safety of American forces in the region above all else. While the American military may not have physically perpetuated the assault, years of funding and sending weapons to Israel, which Donald Trump just bragged about on Truth Social, undeniably places the U.S. at the center of last night's events, Carlson continued. Washington knew these attacks would happen. They aided Israel in carrying them out. Politicians purporting to be America first can't now credibly turn around and say they had nothing to do with it. Our country is in deep. So Carlson clearly not happy with his former public buddy. We know from that lawsuit filed against Fox News to the tune of $787 million. I feel like we don't come back to that number enough that they had to pay out for their lies. Tucker Carlson, not a fan of Donald Trump, thinks he's an idiot, thinks he's a joke, and now he's just making it very public. Donald Trump, as he lies, or maybe tells the truth, I don't even know at this point, is just losing support. He's costing himself as he reveals how, one, out of the loop he was, but two, ineffective he is as a leader. Donald Trump does not have any standing on the world stage anymore, not like he ever did. He's always been perceived as a joke, but he only just continues to show it himself. And so does Pete Hegseth, who is confronted not over this particular issue or any other specific failings that we've seen at the Pentagon, but what he is focused on right now, which is makeup and Donald Trump's military parade. And that takedown had him pretty upset. So let's take a look.
I visited with soldiers in war zones whose life is on the line. So a few tough questions. I think you'll be okay. And so my first question is, are you authorized to disclose intelligence that would put our troops in harm's way to our enemies?
Well, I reject the premise of the
just saying,
question.
Just as a hypothetical, are you authorized to do that?
I have not and do not.
Exactly, and I assume that. So when you told our ranking member that everything that you say is authorized, that wasn't completely accurate, correct?
What I said is that every way that I communicate is authorized.
You actually said everything that you said is authorized. I wrote it down. Now, with that said, and the reason I bring that up is because it's about accountability. And we're talking about this war ethos. The primary component of that is accountability. And I'm going to indulge me in a quick analogy. Republicans introduced a bill on the House floor a few days ago, a resolution standing against terror, racism, hate, anti-Semitism, which as an African, as an American, as a black man, I'm going to stand against those things 6 times a week, twice on Sunday. Now, the nefarious part was there was a line that was stuck at the end of that resolution that essentially gave a shout out to law enforcement, which I do support, but also to ICE, which right now, a lot of Americans have a problem with the way ICE is being deployed. And I'm not happy with what they're doing, nor do I want to shout them out for that. And so accountability was, I didn't duck from the question. I went and I talked to my constituents. I went on social media. I did interviews to explain exactly where I stood, that I stand against hate. I stand against racism. I stand against anti-Semitism. And I hate that that line was stuck in there. That's accountability. So when we're asking you these questions and you're ducking and you're not answering them directly, that's not a culture of a war. What was the term? A war ethos, a warrior ethos. I'm looking at members who serve, and they're taking their lead from you. That starts with you. And if we have troops who are in war zones and they're watching while they're risking their lives, and you can't just answer some tough questions, what kind of culture is that setting? So, as a prosecutor, when I think about what's happening in California and around the country with ICE, it's not only dangerous and unconstitutional, but it raises serious public safety concerns because we have people with masks that are going around saying that they're ICE, and we've had reports of that, saying that they're ICE and committing crimes. And that's a big problem. But it gets me back to the point of the accountability piece. So, for example, do you believe quality military housing is important? Yes or no? And just keep your mic on for time, because I don't only have a minute left.
Our budget commits to robust military housing and barracks up.
Do you believe military children deserve a strong education?
Our budget funds strong education, and we hope more educational choices for military.
Love it. Is it a priority to provide real, reliable care to our veterans?
Of course.
So, Mr. Secretary, we have a problem here because your answers don't match your budget priorities. You said your mission is to restore this warrior ethos and that threats we face are serious, but so must our investments. So when we think of, for example, a $45 million parade, I can think of 45 million things we could do more effectively with $45 million than a parade, such as the things that I mentioned: military housing, military children's education, providing reliable care for our veterans. All of these things would be higher on the priority than a parade. And so the parade, and when we talk about showing strength, we're not talking about theater. We're not talking about showmanship. We're talking about things that actually make our military more lethal and keeps us safer. And so what I'm saying is that in my limited time left is accountability does matter, and this body cares about what our military is doing, because we care about national security, and we all take it very seriously.
Gentleman's time has expired.
It is incredibly not just disheartening, but dangerous that this is our leadership in the current moment, that Donald Trump is completely out of the loop because, like I said, he doesn't have his security briefings being presented as cartoons from Fox with like sparkles popping out of Jesse Waters' head, and he clearly doesn't know how to read. But Pete Hegseth, I don't even know what's going on with him anymore. What's he focused on? The Pentagon, I guess at this point, is just dedicated to figure out who said anything bad about Pete, and that's it. Like those are the national security secrets that matter. It's not keeping Americans safe. It's keeping Pete Hegseth's reputation safe, which I guess you can't do anymore, Pete. It's not like that thing was squeaky clean. But yeah, this is disappointing. It's dangerous. I'm very afraid, but it just means we have to hold these, I was going to say leaders, but not really, more accountable than ever. We're going to be talking about this on the show every single day. If you want to support that and stay up to date, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.